People who were caught in a love triangle. How did the scenario play out? Story 1. Not technically a triangle, but I lived with a friend who was a girl who had this friend that used to come over often. She was one of those people I just hit it off with immediately. I, of course, thought it was love because I was young and stupid. I was the shy type that didn't outright say, "Hey babe, you and me, upstairs, all night long." In fact, I was quite the opposite. We had these walks alone all day in bed, just talking and eating stuff, no steam time, and the innuendo games we were played at every opportunity. I thought things were about to blossom. Cut to New Year's Eve. I was out with friends, not the girl, and one of my male friends, who was more a friend of a friend I didn't really know that well yet, was acting rather weird all night. Kept checking his phone and saying bizarre things like, "Might have to go soon," at 10 p.m. when we were out for New Year's. He suddenly gets up and says, "I've got to go," and off he goes. I thought nothing of it and carried on with my evening. A few days later, the girl was round my place as usual, and we were just getting ready to go to the pub when she stops me and says, "I need to tell you something." I sat back down thinking this was finally the moment where one of us made a move. Yay! Instead, she tells me she's in love with a Mr. Male Friend, the Mr. Male Friend, and that they had been involved for a while. Bit of a shock, to say the least. I hadn't really seen them together, different circle of friends to each other. We walked to the pub with my mind swimming. We got into the pub and it was busy, so I said I'll find a table and just walked home. Locked myself in my room and turned my phone off while trying to process it all. The very next day, I was due to go to the pictures with Mr. Male Friend. This was our first outing as just the two of us, as we wanted to become better friends. He didn't know she had told me yet, but knew very well I liked her a lot. On the 20-minute car journey to the film, we almost get there before he starts hogwashing me on why he left on New Year's Eve night, and I couldn't hold it in any longer. I very calmly said, "I know you went to smash, let's call her Daisy." The rest of the car journey was rather quiet. He mumbled sorry, and I just shrugged. We watched the film, Jack Sparrow 4, without exchanging a word. But on the car journey, I decided, yes, he was a dong, but was it worth falling out over a girl that wasn't interested in me that way? He asked me if I was going to hit him, and I said, "No, I'm going to suggest we go on holiday and put this behind us." We booked a holiday to India that night and became really close friends because of that holiday. Ironically, she ended up madly falling for him, and he wasn't too interested in something serious. It was hard when he spoke to me about it. Unfortunately, me and her drifted away and didn't really hang out anymore. It sounds like this person has a very mature attitude to these relationships. It didn't seem like he was too attached when she finally told him about Mr. Male Friend. And the fact that these two booked a trip together, a holiday together, to become close friends seems a little out of the ordinary for me, or maybe it's just my American growing up sensibilities. What do you think? Story 2. I worked as a counselor at a summer camp during college for a few years. The camp was located in a bit of an isolated place in the woods, so we used to have this term called camp goggles. Similar to beer goggles, it was when the people of the opposite gender start to look better and better as the summer goes on due to the lack of major contact with the outside world. So people start crushing and dating just to break up as soon as the summer is over. Second year I worked there, I hit it off with a girl. Cute, but very take charge type. Our limited weekends off were planned ahead of time by her, etc. I didn't mind it too much, but about halfway through the summer, he and her friends decided to pull a prank of idiotic proportions. It was a weekend off, so many of us would go to the local Walmart, biggest thing in town, to stock up on things we needed. I'm just pulling back into the camp when I get a phone call. It's this girl crying. Someone had stolen her keys and ran off with her car. She and her friends were stranded. Being a natural worrier, I made a quick U-turn and started booking it to where she said she was. Scenarios running through my mind. Is she okay? Is she hurt? There's a long dirt road to get into the camp, and there's dust shooting behind my car as I'm gunning it. Somehow, I see a car parked behind a tree on a side trail of this dirt road that looks a lot like this girl's car. I slow down a bit to find her and her friends laughing at the sight of me flying down this dirt road. All the heated worry turned to ice-cold rage. I continue down the road to find a spot where I can turn around, and I am quietly fuming. I turn around, and her car is no longer there, so I head back to camp. I find her telling the other counselors this hilarious prank she pulled on me. Like a mental death note, I wrote her name in it, and in my perspective, she did not exist. I don't know if it was petty revenge or I truly erased her, but there was another girl who grew on me quickly. For story's sake, prank girl we will call V, new girl we will call J. J and I started hanging out a lot. V, on the other hand, was confused why I would no longer speak to her. This continued for the rest of the summer. Things with J were going very well, and V kept trying to rekindle what we had. The last day of the summer, we have a very large banquet in celebration of successfully finishing. I obviously asked J to be my date, and as luck would have it, V ended up going stag, seated across from us. This made for an incredibly uncomfortable dinner. The banquet comes to an end. Jay and I are making out in our cars before we go home, and V ends up walking by us. I can hear her whisper, "Butthole," with a tear in her eye. I say goodbye to Jay as we live states away, and I never ended up speaking to either of them ever again. It's just summer stuff. We've all had our crushes of summer camp. Have you ever tried to keep in touch with your summer crush from camp and only to have it drift apart? I've kind of had a situation similar to that. But anyway, story 3. This is a story of a love square versus triangle, but pretty crazy. I had a living together girlfriend for maybe 6 months, together maybe 1 year. She cheated pretty bad. I don't know the depths of it, but at least 2. She was really good about keeping me in the dark and would tell me how much she loves me about every 30 seconds, which made me believe that she was loyal. She didn't discuss other men, not as friends or anything, all silence. I'm not the jealous type at all, so I normally just trust and assume it's all good until it isn't. Nobody got caught. She just secretly planned to move in with one of the guys and surprise moved out one day. Not such a great feeling coming into an empty home. Took years to even learn of what transpired. She'd had a tough childhood and always told people the gruesome story of her mom passing away from domestic abuse, with specifically her mom's eye dangling from the socket. Fast forward 1.5 years, and I'm living with a new girlfriend, and I share the eye dangling story, and a light bulb goes off in her head. We piece together what happened. When I was living with a cheating girlfriend, we had some drama. She had broken up with me, got with a guy, then came back to me, in addition to other trust-eroding issues. So I was basically not interested in touching her for lack of trust. Cheating girlfriend apparently was sleeping with the boyfriend of what would be my girlfriend in 1.5 years. Boyfriend of my future girlfriend says, "Oh hey, I know this girl. She's had a tough life. Tells the whole mom passing away story with the specific of the dangling eye, which is how we figured it out, and he goes on, she needs a place to stay. Can she stay with us? She's worried her roommate is going to violate her. My future girlfriend calls him out that he's cheating with her since he has a history of cheating, and he admits it. So obviously she did not stay with him. Honestly, the cheating I don't mind as much as calling me a roommate and potential violator when I thought I was in love with this girl claiming to be my girlfriend and wanting to settle down with me. Per the too long didn't read, my girlfriends at the time had an ex-boyfriend that cheated on her with the girl I was seeing who cheated on me. Also, before I met my girlfriend at the time, apparently I'd had a dalliance with her childhood best friend. Had no idea. I didn't actually do anything wrong since that predated our relationship, but I still feel like a jerk about it between those two sordid bits of history. My private life included maybe 5 people in a period of 2 years, and 3 of them are all intertwined like this, which is crazy. Kinda related, but my Aunt Janet was cheated on by my Uncle John with a girl, Kate. Kate was cheating with John on her husband, Brandon. Now, Kate and John are getting married, and Janet and Brandon are getting married. Basically, they switched partners. All fake names, of course. This is one of those stories that I really wish I had a marker or something so I could just write on the screen to just keep track of these stories while I'm doing it. I barely followed that at all. But wow, it just sounds like things worked out in the end. I'm glad that happened. Story 4. Dated a guy for a couple months. He was fun and sweet, but frankly not very intelligent. I didn't see much of a future, but the spicy time was amazing. So when he suggested an open relationship, I thought that sounded perfect. Silly young me didn't realize an open relationship takes maturity and communication skills, neither of which this dude had. So anyway, he started being a trash boyfriend pretty fast. Stood me up once or twice. He was always hanging out with this friend of his, Stacia. Stacia this and Stacia that. But we'd established that we'd always tell the other person if they got involved with someone else. And Stacia didn't seem the type to do me dirty. Didn't know her too well, but we were friends with a lot of the same good people, so surely nothing was going on. Well, finally, I got sick of his trash. He would ignore my needs, and we were spending less and less time together. At a party at his house, where Stacia thankfully was not in attendance, we had a talk and ended things. I said something like, "Dude, this used to be such a fun and good thing. I just don't understand why it had to become so awful." He paused for a long while and finally told me, well, he's sort of begun a relationship with someone else. I didn't even need to ask who it was. I promptly cut contact with him, and they dated for a year before he cheated on her. At a very low time in my life, when I was dealing with another breakup and getting kicked out of my apartment, Stacia stepped up and let me live with her. We went on to be great friends. She came to visit me when I moved away for grad school, and we went on a road trip around the state. And this past summer, she even got me a dream summer job in a national park with her. Turns out, the awful guy had told her the 2 of us were over when they got together, so she didn't know he was cheating and continuing to sleep with me for a while. Stacia and I are both in relationships and looking forward to next summer. As far as I know, the dude is still working the same dead-end job and probably dating some poor young girl like myself 7 years younger. Most probably he didn't see much of a future with you either and looked for a replacement before you did. Story 5. I worked offshore. Knew I was going to be gone for a few months. Girlfriend said she wanted to wait since I was such a great guy. Came back. She was the same number of months pregnant that I had been. We'd always used protection, so I was skeptical, but supportive. She had the kid, and it was a different race than either of us. She admitted that while I'd been gone, she'd had another boyfriend, then added that she was still seeing him, acted like it was completely normal, as if it would have been crazy for her to stay alone like she'd offered to. DNA test. Not mine. Noped the hell out. Another guy goes to prison a few months later. Rumor mill says he hits her often. She stalked me for decades, called my parents to find me, called my grandparents to find me. I would see her around town and she would start following me and begging me to give her another chance. I eventually moved over 700 miles away. She still calls. Unlisted numbers to this day because of her. She gets the number from family or friends. Last I heard, she has 3 kids with 3 dads, never had a job, 2 of the dads in prison. I'm her one that got away. In some ways, I do feel sad for her. She's had a rough life. According to her, I was the only guy that treated her well. If she'd reciprocated, who knows? Our romance was in 1996. I got a message from her on Facebook last month. I didn't reply. Man, if she'd applied half that drive and persistence into developing a stable relationship with a good guy that returned her interest, she'd have a great life right now. Story 6. A few years back, I had hernia surgery and was on bed rest for a few days. One night, out of nowhere, an old fling hit me up telling me she was in the neighborhood. I was ecstatic at hearing her voice because she was one of the most beautiful, intelligent, and successful people I knew, and I always admired her. She ended up coming over and taking care of me, and we hit it off way better than before. I didn't know it at the time, but she was dating this guy since forever and was even living with him. When I found out, I told her that I was going to be seeing other people. We still ended up seeing each other for a few months, and she eventually had to tell him that she cheated on him with me. He wanted her to stay, even after we spent a weekend at my cabin. She stayed with the other guy because he was a safe option, and she needed a place to stay. I couldn't promise her anything because I felt like I couldn't trust her, and she didn't like the fact that I was dating other people. In reality, we were in a relationship, and I saw other people as a way to not think about her living with her boyfriend. The whole thing was an awful situation because we were madly in love with each other. But because of our trust issues, we ended up breaking it off. I ended up in a relationship with someone else for like a month, and we never really talked since then. She married that guy a few months later after I married my wife. She still calls at night from time to time, but I never answer because I'm happily married and I don't need that kind of trouble in my life. Good for you to let that phone ring. This one's kind of a tough one. They said they were really in love with each other, but they were looking towards the future. She was looking for more security, and he was looking for someone to trust. I don't know. Do you think that if they really loved each other, they would have tried to work it out? Or do you think that there were other reasons for having a forever partner that just superseded real love? Do you think they were really that much in love with each other? Let me know. Story 7. I was on work contract on location. Met a guy, started dating, and things were good. One day, he told me his ex was going to be in town for a day and that they were going to hang out. That night, we were supposed to meet for drinks at the pub, and he was super distant and acting strange. It was obvious to me he had hooked up with her. He ended up leaving early to go to bed, alone. I was ticked off. There was another guy who also worked for the company who had always flirted with me. I happened to literally run into him as I'm headed outside to the balcony. Maybe it was something I was giving off, but he grabbed me and kissed me, and I went with it, and we ended up hooking up that night on the balcony, which also happened to be the place me and the first guy hooked up the first time. The next day, Guy 1 confesses that he hooked up with his ex. I told him I could tell and kinda left it at that. We just started hanging out less, and I started seeing a lot more of Guy 2. One day, it was quite apparent that they both weren't talking to me. They had talked. I rode up the elevator with one of their coworkers one day who told me that they were both upset that I had hooked up with him in the same location, which frankly I still think is silly. They ended up making friends, but I was out of the picture. Last week, my contract rolled around, and one particular party night, Guy 1 is giving me a lot of attention. Guy 2 also sees this going on. I end up leaving with Guy 1. At my place, the phone rings, and it's Guy 2, and he asks to speak to Guy 1. They're both from the same country, so they end up having some long drawn-out conversation that I don't understand. 10 minutes later, there's a knock at the door. It's Guy 2. He asks to come in. I let him in, and they both proceeded to start kissing me and removing my clothes. It was a good night. Now that's a twist. Story 8. It's a high school romance, nothing too dramatic. I was so in love with this boy, the young innocent type of love. He was my first guy friend, and we got along so well. We joke, laugh, and since we sat near each other in class, it was a bliss for me. He started flirting, yet I knew he still had a thing for his beautiful ex-girlfriend that recently broke up with him. He'd give me shy smiles, and I'd just melt inside. I remember once we were in class, and we were playing with our hands. Wow, it sounds wrong. And I just let my hand chill on the table. This is weird to explain. Palm up, and he put his hand on mine. We linked our hands, and he pulled the cutest boyish smile, then hit his face with his other hand. Gave me butterflies in the stomach, and one of my girlfriends saw it. She said something is up between us, and she was worried for me since he talked nonstop about his ex. I wasn't the most attractive and was chubby. I know guys would have laughed at him if something happened, but, faith. Well, his ex was a gorgeous Spanish girl with dark curls and an hourglass body. He told me he met her at a little party with his friends, a birthday, I think, and she dragged him to a bedroom and started kissing him hard. Well, my heart broke, but I decided to support him. I wouldn't have said anything in a million years. They got back together shortly after. Now that I think about it, I don't recall why she broke up with him. Anyway, a year later, we stopped talking completely when I found out a friend told me she told him that I liked him. His response was so mature. He literally said he felt flattered and I'm still his friend, but when we met at school after that summer, we just stopped. I don't know. It felt awkward. Later, he started dating a model-like girl a year younger than us in the same school and just ignored everyone in class. Years later, we see each other on the street, ignore each other, but we met eyes. He always looks at me like he wants to stop and tell me something, but, awkward. I most likely misunderstood how he was acting. Good thing I didn't get my hopes up too much. It's not as intense as these other stories, but he's my high school love, so there's that. Story 9. I was in college and really liked this college guy in one of my classes. We instantly hit it off and became great friends. I really liked him. I was head over heels, and he knew it. He was still hung up on his ex-girlfriend, but we fooled around from time to time. A guy from my high school kept asking me out, and I kept turning him down. He wasn't my type, but we remained friends. All my friends were telling me to give a high school guy a chance, but I wanted a college guy. I got super sick and texted a college guy asking if he could take me to the hospital. He never replied, but I knew he read it. So I texted a high school guy, and he was at my apartment in 10 minutes, and even offered to pay my copay because I was flat broke at the time. I paid him back. After that happened, the college guy wouldn't talk to me for a while, and like an idiot, I kept going after him. I was super heartbroken. High school guy helped me through it. Finally, I decided to give a high school guy a chance. Now we're married and about to celebrate our 7-year anniversary with our 3-year-old son. That's good stuff. It kind of sounds like it's a nice guy kind of hanging on and being a friend, hoping that the girl will give him attention. But I don't know. It seems like he had the support from all these other people. It's like all the other people were saying, hey, you should give this guy a chance. So maybe he wasn't as annoying as what a nice guy would typically be. Glad it worked out. Story 10. I had been with my ex for 2 years. treated her like the princess that she wants to be, gave her unconditional trust, which I have now learned was a mistake. She has terrible social skills, so I encouraged her to make guy friends as she doesn't have any, tried to get her back in contact with one of her long-lost friends from teenage years, encouraged them to spend time together, and I even spent time and got to know the guy to show my girl I have her interest in mind. She ends up smashing him and telling me that they share a pure form of love, something she never had from me. Cried, was depressed, and I felt like a worthless piece of trash because no matter what I did, it seems like I don't deserve to be loved. Forgive her, tried to win her back, and gave her patience and time while hiding how much this is killing me inside because she tells me she feels guilty to see me like this. End up figuring out she's just a spoiled, selfish brat because she will not stop lying to me and kept seeing him. And he is a manipulative and controlling substance addict. They both never had a real relationship and told me that they developed true love within a couple of weeks of smashing each other. Still hurts me like heck to think about this, but I really did everything that I could. It did not end up good for me. Messed me up mentally as I have depression. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. Story 11. Not exactly a love triangle, but close enough. In sophomore year of high school, I met a girl named Julia, and I immediately developed a giant crush on her which lasted for most of high school. My best friend Alex knew of this, but then started hitting on Julia at my birthday party late junior year after I had introduced them. Alex and Julia then began quietly dating that summer, neither of them deciding to tell me about it. I found out only after both of them came to me seeking support when they broke up. So not only was I very hurt, but also tasked with consoling 2 of my closest friends. They are no longer on speaking terms. Alex now spends most of his time complaining about how Julia broke his heart and telling me about how he'll never move on, and Julia and I grew much closer as I helped her process the breakup and get on with it. I no longer like Julia, and am as of just recently in a relationship with someone else. I'm still very close to Julia, and Alex and I recently began living together. They frequently try to involve me in their fights. I don't know how this ends. It's still going on. Too long didn't read? My best friend started dating my other best friend who I had a large crush on. They started dating, broke up, and now neither of them is speaking to the other. I am still in the middle of their fighting despite my efforts to the contrary. Story 12. I was hooking up and smashing a coworker, call her Jessica, here and there for a while. Her best friend, Amanda, starts working with us. I start hooking up and fooling around with Amanda. Months go by. Amanda knows that I'm hooking up with Jessica, but doesn't care. However, Jessica doesn't know about Amanda. One night, after the 3 of us were getting out of work, we had plans to all go out. Another coworker, who was jealous of me for hooking up with his crush Jessica, decides to yell at Jessica. I'm hooking up and smashing her best friend. I'm confronted by Jessica and admit to it. I thought the night was done for, but Jessica was still interested in hanging out and coming to my town to meet up with a few friends at a bar. My guess is that she was going to try to hook up with one of my friends to get back at me. We met up with my good friend Danielle. A bit of a background. Jessica and Danielle are both bi. After many drinks, the bar closes and we all decide to go back to my place. Me, Jessica, Amanda, and Danielle. By the time we get inside, Amanda passes out immediately on the couch we were on. Jessica and Danielle start hooking up with each other next to me and start eating each other out. I saw the opportunity and just whipped my peen out and walked over to Jessica, where she proceeded to blow me. We end up having a great threesome on the same couch that Amanda is knocked out cold on. I felt like a man. Still to this day, I tease Jessica about her plans to try and make me jealous by hooking up with one of my friends, but ultimately backfiring and giving me the time of my life. Too long didn't read? I was hooking up with 2 best friends. One didn't care, the other found out and got ticked, tried getting back at me by hooking up with one of my friends, but said friend was another woman, which led to my first threesome. This is kind of what every guy, most guys, think is going to be the outcome. We've got that strong of an ego to think that we can carry this play to the end zone like that. And also, did Amanda find out? Did they it seems he still talks with Jessica. I don't know. I don't think Amanda's in the picture anymore. What do you think? Story 13. In high school, I was on and off with one guy. We'll call him Nick. All the while, I had a massive crush on an upperclassman named Dylan. Also note that we were all friends. During an off period, Dylan asked me to prom because his date was a shrew or whatever. So I went to prom with him and thoroughly ticked off Nick. Dylan and I hung out a few times after prom, and we eventually became a couple. Nick and I had a huge fight and didn't speak for a year, with a few respites. Dylan had enlisted in the Air Force and was stationed a few thousand miles away, so we were long distance. I was a junior at the time. He was supposed to be home for prom, but obviously wasn't. So I took a male friend who was in Nick's circle. Nick and I talked a little, danced a little, but I was still with Dylan, so it was nothing more than that. But at the end of the school year, Dylan and I broke up. On the final day, Nick kissed me. Over that summer, I got back together with Dylan and cut contact with Nick again, until I dumped Dylan for the final time just before the start of senior year. Nick and I reconnected, got serious, and a year or so after graduation, we were engaged. We fell apart after a year of long distance. I went back to Dylan. He had become a sort of comfort for me, or a kind of security blanket. Nick and I lost touch quickly after the breakup. I started to move on, and I was content. 9 months after the breakup, Nick messaged me and we reconnected. 2 months later, we were engaged again. 5 months after we had reconnected, we were married. Too long didn't read? High school love triangle ended with a marriage. I wasn't sure, but I think I'd have to disapprove of what you did. Bouncing between dudes over and over and using one as a security blanket is pretty messed up.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 14. Had what I thought was a good friend in high school. She wasn't very pretty and had a lot of self-esteem issues. Therefore, she sort of got off on stealing guys from girls. Read, she put out. I liked a guy that she and I were both friends with. She'd never been interested in this guy at all whatsoever. I told her I liked him and asked her to play matchmaker because she had a class with him. Time drags on and she's making up excuses about him giving me an answer. Finally, one night she comes to my house for a sleepover. Tells me she's in love with my crush and he's in love with her too. Out of complete nowhere. How convenient. She informs me she smashed him the night before at his house but doesn't want me to hate her. While I'm reeling, she suggests we go to the movies to make me feel better. She asks to use my makeup. Gets super dolled up, which was very unlike her. We get there, and she's clearly looking around the theater searching for someone. In the movie, she won't sit still and keeps leaving me. Finally, one time, she was gone for a while. Come to find out, she was meeting up with him while I was sitting in the theater alone. They did not end up together. I'm pretty sure after a week they were done. I don't know. I didn't ask. But she had two overaged boyfriends in prison at the same time the following semester. She's had a rough life since. The dude ended up knocking up one of my classmates in senior year. Turns out he's a deadbeat dad with missing teeth and stuff. So, I'm good. Story 15. Few years back, I was dating this girl for a year and a half. Practically best friends. I also had one guy's best friend and not many other close friends. Best friend, we will call him Jeff. Then girlfriend, we will call Jen. And I would hang out with all the time. They would even hang out together sometimes. But I was certain, and correct in assuming so, that they just hung out. Then, we break up, but still on good terms. 3 days after the breakup, found out they had been hanging out, but making out this time. I find this out as Jeff is on my couch, at my house the night before my family is taking him with us on a week-long vacation. Breaks down, tells me he was about to confess, and I forgive him. Bros first, right? Great vacation. We pay to fly him home since we wanted some purely family time. A few days pass, I get a call. Jen? Wonder what she wants. Breaks down, tells me Monday night Jeff came over and they smashed. It's important to note he left where we were on Sunday. I then call Jeff and make him confess. He tries to blame me, saying this is between two adults and it's private, so I should stay out. And I did. Broke my heart. Lost 2 best friends in a day. Went to college 2 weeks later with no friends at all. Today, I have forgiven him, since he was never one to think with the proper head at any given moment. He and I click, so I figure it's not worth losing that. As for Jen, at my grandfather's funeral, she attended. She was very close to my grandparents, so this was not an issue, her attending and all. As she's leaving the church, she comes up to me and we talk for a few minutes. She leaves. I talk to dozens and dozens of other people there. That night, she complains I didn't talk to her enough. I say, sorry, I was preoccupied that my grandfather had passed and there were many people I needed to talk to besides her. Anyways, I spoke to her for a few minutes, which was more than anyone else. Her reply? He's gone. Get over it. So no, I don't talk to her anymore. Story 16. After breaking up with my long-term boyfriend at the time because I wanted to explore my physical orientation, I ended up getting close to his childhood friend, a guy. I started seeing him in secret because I never intended to get involved with another guy after making a big deal about wanting to see girls. Me and the ex stayed best friends, but when he found out about the childhood friend, he made me choose between them. After so much, I ended up choosing my ex-best friend because he was the most important person in the world to me. We had been through so much. Fast forward a month, and the childhood friend finds the girl he most likely will marry, and I'm heartbroken. He then for months says he wishes it was me, etc., to which I block him and try to move on. Fast forward to the next year, and I hear from him again. He wants me and his girlfriend, who is questioning her physical orientation, to be friends because she's going to school here 2 states away from home and needs a friend and someone to talk to. Her and I immediately hit it off, and I started to fall for her. We start hooking up, and her boyfriend thinks, holy hell, this is awesome, and tries to get in on it, which works at first until I realize I deeply care for her, but not him. I also find out that she has no idea about my past with her boyfriend, and I am furious that he would keep that from her. I stepped away from the situation after finding out that he kept a lot more from her and tried to manipulate me. He would use her phone as her and tried to contact me a few times and lied to her and I about it. Even though I still deeply care for her, leaving them was for the best. Story 17. I used to be infatuated with this girl. We spoke all hours of the day, would sit in video chat on MS Messenger till 5 in the morning. I adored her. We would spend the night together frequently. We started a tradition of on New Year's Eve, instead of going to parties, we would go for a 5 or 6 hour walk and not count in the new year. She liked me, but would never openly admit it. She was the first person I said I love you to. The whole rose-tinted glasses make red flags just look like flags. She cheated on 7 or 8 boyfriends with me, and since I was in love with her, I didn't feel guilty at all. What made me wise up and realize what I was doing was wrong when her semi-pro MMA fighter boyfriend found out I was expecting the beating of my life. Instead, he completely broke down, and it destroyed him. She will still message me if I ever pass through my hometown. I don't know how she knows when I do because I live 70 miles away. But once she realizes that I'm not interested in cheating on my significant other, it slows down, then stops. I'll get a message from her 2 or 3 times a year. This started over 11 years ago. Story 18. Had a crush on a girl in high school, head over heels, you could say. We hung out, played video games together, and talked about anime. Generally, she was a nice person that complimented my personality very well. She also confirmed she was single. I was the type to not disclose my crushes often and told very few. One guy in particular I thought to be a good friend, so upon asking if I had any crushes, I answered. Then, despite knowledge of said crush, he goes behind my back and starts to date her. Initially, I was angry at the guy. Some would say rightfully so. Later, I cooled off and just conceded it to me being too sheepish to ask her on my own. As for her, I at least hope she's happy with the guy. Her and I are both still friends to this day. Dude, you're a friend zone. That's not an actual triangle. Story 19. My relationship was all but over. Ex didn't like doing things I did, and it was just all around toxic. He kept pushing me to bring his best friend to concerts with me, so we became concert buddies. Then, we went to a long weekend music festival together. I crashed at his place all weekend. We started hooking up regularly. At this point, my ex pushed for an open relationship so I wasn't cheating, and he was aware I was sleeping with him. Then, my ex got jealous and closed our relationship. I tried to stop seeing his friend, but we got along way too well. Ex and I had our 3-year anniversary. He did some really messed up stuff to me. I broke up with him. Officially began dating his best friend 2 weeks after. We moved in together another 2 weeks after that. I got pregnant 6 months in, and we just celebrated 4 years together and are doing quite well. Story 20. Dated a girl for a few months. Tried to keep it going long distance for 7 months. I broke up with her after about 3. Heard I really broke her heart and messed her up from friends back home. Fast forward a few months. We both end up in relationships with boys, with the same anniversary with them almost to the hour, we found out later. I'm going back home, but my boyfriend convinces me to go a long distance with him. I get back home, see her, and immediately realize I've made a massive mistake. My boyfriend is somewhat out of the picture at this point, but her boyfriend knew stuff was up, and there was a very painful process of dealing with everyone's trash. Eventually, we both left our boyfriends for each other. Been back together for 1.5 years now. Too long didn't read, broke up with my girlfriend, got boys involved, got back together in the end. That was a roller coaster. Story 21. Had a thing with a guy. He proceeds to kiss best friend. I forgive them both. They proceed to make out in secret and get to the point where he asked her to smash. They cracked and told me again. This had not been the first time something like this happened with my friend. Needless to say, he no longer had a love interest after that, and I lost an awful friend, which I guess is a win in the end. I've never understood the whole go after a friend's significant other thing. I once had a former boyfriend's roommate hit on me after we'd broken up, and even that felt weird and off-putting. Story 22. Was being manipulated by a guy 7 years older than me. He was gaslighting me and stringing me along. His girlfriend, baby mama, knew about me, but stayed with him and blamed me for everything. I eventually cut him off, and they got married. She messaged me on Facebook about a year ago asking if we had slept together while they were married. I hadn't, and she apologized for putting everything on me. It was unfair of her to do because I was so young, 19 when it started, and he was manipulating me and taking advantage of how naive I was. She explained she kicked him out and was beginning divorce proceedings because I wasn't the only one he cheated on her with, and he continued to cheat on her after they were married, including with their next-door neighbor. We ended up talking and laughing over what a scumbag loser he is, and laughing over the fact that we fell for his trash. I recently messaged her to ask how the divorce turned out. It's over. She came out on top, and me and her are friendly now. It amazes me that some people believe that their cheating spouses will stop cheating on them once they're married. Story 23. My best friend was in an accident, and his girlfriend relied on me to get through. We got really close, and when recovered, he just wasn't the same. It was around this time of year, actually, when she asked if I had ever kissed anyone. I was 17, to which I said no. We proceeded to move from that to smashing, and I was over the moon for several months. Then, they broke up, and I knew I had messed up to the next degree. I'm still friends with him, but she and I both realized what we had done and never spoke again. And I know I deserve to go to downvote hell, and it's the least I deserve. After that, my life went downhill. I went to college and became the closest thing to an alcoholic you can be. 3 years later, I missed the heck out of her because I was deeply in love, but I wish I could go back and change it. Man, I wish I could. She was probably the only woman I'll ever be able to love, and I lost her because I was frisky. She was smart and beautiful and kind, and I loved her. I'm getting over her slowly, but I wish I could go back. I know I sound like a crass butthole, but it wasn't to get at my friend or hurt him. He never found out, which is bad, but I never meant to hurt him with her. I just fell in love with the wrong woman at the wrong time. Story 24. I was seeing 2 guys casually, mostly just to smash. I caught feelings for both. They caught feelings for me. Tried poly, which slowly blew up in my face. Not because poly was bad, but because guy A treated me badly in a lot of ways. He also had an unspoken expectation that given enough time, I would choose him over guy B. I only found out after a year and a half of dating and planning our future as a trio. Not a word was said before we broke up. Now dating B monogamously, and he treats me better than any partner I've had. He's absolutely amazing. Story 25. Not so much as love triangle as a love V, but here's how it went. I liked this girl. This girl had a boyfriend, but was bi-curious and into me. She asked her boyfriend if experimenting with me was okay. He said it was okay so long as he was involved too. Me, being 21 and having a bad case of the feelings, agreed to this. It lasted maybe a month and it was really awkward. It ended with me breaking up with them, but those two staying together. After that, I decided I'm not into guys at all and would rather not repeat that experience. I don't talk to that pair much anymore, but I think they're married now. Yeah, that's usually what they really are. Triangle is usually not a good descriptor for it. Story 26. She was in a friends with benefits thing with a guy she hated, but I guess smashed her really well because she kept going back to him. She was really into me because I could make her laugh. I considered her to be just a friend, but she was pretty, and when she expressed interest, I foolishly decided to give it a try despite my instincts. She dumped him and got with me. It was a train wreck, and I felt guilty the whole time we were together and eventually broke up with her. Story 27. I really had a crush on this girl who lived in Columbia. I'm in Massachusetts. But I met her through my friend in Chicago who played games with her. I had her on Skype from a conversation months prior. I was a lonely person, and my friend in Chicago had like 3 girls in his area he was into and a few online, and I decided to message the Colombian girl one day. We started talking, which led to me liking her a lot more. She liked him at the time, and things got complicated. I felt like I was betraying a friend by going for her, and eventually we told him. It sort of turned into a competition. I eventually won and said my friend didn't talk for a few years. We're fine now. I went to Colombia 3 times and she's been here. It's been almost 7 years since I decided to message her, March 10th, 2011. And we got married in June, and she now lives with me. Turned out pretty good. Story 26. Mine was like some kind of freak love square. 2 guys wanted to date me, and I wanted to date a guy who didn't give a care about me unless it involved dancing. I gave up on chasing the dancer. I dated one of the guys who originally wanted to date me. It ended badly. I decided to date the other guy who seemed interested. We got married and are expecting a baby. It's always in the last place you look. Congratulations. Story 29. Was dating a guy. He confessed to one of his best friends that he liked her. She rejected him, was mad because I was second choice, but forgave him because curse my life. He still likes her, and she messes with him. They fight because she doesn't want me around. They become friends again. I dump him. He admits to never loving me, was in it for the act of a relationship. Now he is all over her, and she still plays him. I'm sad here because I loved him. R.I.P. Story 30. Me, guy, and girl. Turns out the girl was sleeping with a guy while dating me. Also turns out girl was chronically incapable of honesty. Guy and I end up hanging out a lot because we were both trying to smash the girl, and somehow along the line, we realized she was being hilariously dishonest with both of us, pointed it out to each other, mutually gave up the girl, and we've been best friends ever since. Story 31. After basically being a butthole for a bit and stringing them both along while I tried to make up my mind, I stopped dating both of them and stayed single for about a year to get myself together. I think generally, if you're caught in a love triangle and don't know who to choose, that's a sign that neither of them is right for you. Story 32. He asked her to marry him at my birthday dinner. She said yes, I got drunk, and he drove me home. Our D&D group survived the event, and I was a bridesmaid. Trash moves on his part. Story 33. I had a crush on a girl. My roommate and also friend broke up with his then-girlfriend and proceeded to start dating said girl. She knew I had a crush. He knew I had a crush on her long before he broke up. Feels lonely. Story 34. Am gay. Sort of like my friend in high school. His girlfriend always liked me and fondled me a few times when she was drunk. Was very awkward. He still doesn't know that I liked him and that his girlfriend liked me. Story 35. Married gay guy. We were non-monogamous. I got really close to a friends with benefits, and now we are 3. Took a hot mess and nearly 2 years of drama, but we are a functioning poly-threesome. Story 36. All 3 of us now hate each other with the fury of 1,000 suns, and wouldn't particularly care if the other 2 died of Lou Gehrig's disease, so not too bad, all things considered. Story 37. 3 of my friends and I all liked the same girl. They would hit on her. I instead befriended her older and very protective brother. I got the girl. Story 38. He chose her. She was the younger one. He left her because he was into her little sister. It made me less bitter. Story 39. Tried poly. I loved him. He loved her. She loved me. It was a scat show. Okay, that's an actual triangle. Story 40. Badly. I had no place getting in the middle. Luckily, I realized that and got the heck out. Not soon enough, though, and not before doing a couple of things I regret. Story 41. I tried offing myself and they got married. It was an awful situation and I was being used. Story 42. None of us ended up with any of us, and a whole new set of friends had to be found. Story 43. Not good at all, and I don't ever recommend it.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.